It was a quiet evening when the FBI director decided to drive home after an unusually long day of meetings. The streets were empty, the kind of quiet that made the city feel both peaceful and strange. Streetlights flickered softly, reflecting off the wet pavement from an earlier rain. He enjoyed these rare moments of calm, away from the constant demands of work, the weight of responsibility, and the pressure of decisions that affected thousands of lives. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen. As he navigated the familiar streets, he noticed the sudden flash of lights behind him. At first, he thought it was a routine traffic stop, nothing unusual. He slowed down and pulled to the side of the road as any law-abiding citizen would do. Then he saw the officer stepping out of the car, the uniform neat and professional, yet the stance rigid, almost aggressive. The officer moved toward the vehicle, hand hovering near his gun. The FBI director immediately felt a sense of unease. He raised his hand slowly, a gesture of compliance and peace. The officer's voice was sharp and commanding. "Step out of the car," he demanded. Confused, the director tried to speak, to explain, but the officer was already pulling his weapon. A crowd of curious neighbors began to gather, drawn by the flashing lights and the tension that filled the street. People peeked from their windows, whispering to each other, their phones ready to capture what was unfolding. The director, though calm, could feel the adrenaline rushing through his body. Every decision had to be precise, every movement carefully calculated. He slowly opened the car door, hands still raised, and stepped out. The officer's eyes were wide, a mixture of suspicion and fear, and he kept the gun trained steadily. The director reached for his wallet, pulling out his badge and identification. "I am the FBI director," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I am not a threat. Please lower your weapon." The officer hesitated, scanning the documents with doubt. "I need to verify this," he said, his tone tense. The director nodded, understanding the protocol, but also feeling the absurdity of the situation. He had followed every traffic rule, had not posed a threat, and yet here he was, treated like a criminal. Around them, the small crowd grew, whispers turning into murmurs, murmurs turning into shocked exclamations. People recorded the event on their phones, sharing live videos with friends and family. Other officers arrived shortly after, drawn by the call for backup. They approached cautiously, unsure of the situation, and quickly realized the gravity of what was happening. The director remained calm, hands raised, eyes focused on the officer who still held his weapon. There was a tension in the air, a fragile balance between authority and error, between safety and danger. The director knew that one wrong move could escalate things further. The officer finally spoke again, his voice less steady now. I need to be sure." The director nodded, understanding the fear that can accompany authority. He held out his hands and waited while the officer made a call to confirm his identity. The minutes stretched painfully, each second feeling longer than the last. The crowd watched silently, the city itself seeming to hold its breath. It was an unusual sight, a man of immense power, respected nationwide, standing vulnerable on a quiet street, held at gunpoint by a single officer's doubt. During the verification process, neighbors whispered among themselves. "Is that really him?" one asked. "I can't believe they're treating him like this," another said. Children peered from behind curtains, fascinated and scared by the flashing lights and tense voices. The director could see the concern and curiosity in their eyes, yet he remained composed. Years of training, years of navigating tense situations, allowed him to maintain control over his body and mind. Finally, the officer's phone call was complete. The voice on the other end confirmed the identity, and relief washed over the scene. The officer lowered his weapon, his hands shaking slightly. The director kept his hands visible, a gesture of continued compliance, but he allowed himself a small sigh of relief. The crowd around them began to disperse slowly, some still filming, others simply trying to make sense of what they had witnessed. The director stepped back toward his vehicle, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering tension. As he settled back into his car, he reflected on the event. It was a stark reminder that even those at the highest levels of authority could be vulnerable. One person's fear, one misjudgment could create a moment of danger, a moment where power and control were stripped away. He understood the officer's perspective, the pressure that comes with enforcing the law, but he also knew that accountability was essential. Mistakes like these could not be ignored. The drive home continued in silence, the city returning to its quiet rhythm. Streetlights cast long shadows, the reflections of passing cars streaking across the wet pavement. The director thought about the people who had witnessed the event, the stories that would spread, the discussions that would follow. In the world of law enforcement, every action is scrutinized, every decision analyzed. This incident would be no different. It would spark conversations, investigations, and perhaps changes in protocol. For the director, the night was a lesson in patience, restraint, and perspective. It was a reminder that authority comes with responsibility, but also that authority does not make one invincible. The human element, the unpredictability of fear and reaction could affect anyone regardless of rank or position. As he pulled into his driveway and parked, he took a moment to breathe, to process, and to appreciate the simple fact of safety. The ordeal had ended, but its implications would resonate for some time. Inside the house, he placed his keys on the counter and removed his coat, thinking about the officer and the chain of events that had led to the misunderstanding. It was clear that training, communication, and verification were essential to prevent such situations. He made a mental note to address these issues with his team, ensuring that lessons were learned and that similar incidents could be avoided in the future. The evening faded into night, the city calm once more. Yet the images of the tense street, the officer with gun raised, and the crowd of onlookers lingered in his mind. It was a rare moment that captured the fragility of safety and the importance of understanding, a reminder that even those entrusted with immense power could find themselves in unexpected danger. And in that reflection, the director found clarity, determination, and a renewed commitment to the principles of justice, accountability, and human understanding. The day after the incident, the city was still buzzing with whispers and questions. People who had seen the encounter were talking to friends, sharing videos online, and replaying the moments over and over. The FBI director woke up early, still thinking about the tense street and the officer holding him at gunpoint. The experience had shaken him more than he had expected. Even after years in law enforcement and countless dangerous situations, being vulnerable in such a public way left a mark. He arrived at the office, greeted by his team with polite smiles and cautious conversation. Everyone knew about the incident, yet no one fully understood what it had felt like for him. He sat down in his office, reflecting quietly, reviewing the details in his mind. He wanted to understand why the officer had reacted that way, what led to the misunderstanding, and how such mistakes could be prevented in the future. The young officer involved was already under internal investigation. The director had insisted on a thorough and fair process. He knew that the officer was likely under immense pressure, that fear and uncertainty can sometimes override judgment. Still, the potential consequences were serious, not only for the officer but for the public's trust in law enforcement. The director reviewed reports, watched the footage captured by witnesses, and noted the officer's actions. Each detail mattered, every reaction had to be understood. Meanwhile, the city's reaction was growing. News outlets had picked up the story, presenting it in various ways. Some focused on the shock and danger of holding the nation's top law enforcement official at gunpoint. Others analyzed the mistake, questioning police training and judgment. Social media was full of debate. People expressed outrage, sympathy, and curiosity. Videos went viral, showing the director standing calmly with hands raised while the officer cautiously approached. Public comments ranged from support for the director's composure to criticism of the officer's overreaction. In the office, the director called for a meeting with senior law enforcement leaders. The goal was not to punish recklessly, but to understand and address the systemic issues that could lead to such incidents. He emphasized training, verification, and communication. Mistakes happen, he said, but accountability and learning from them were crucial. He reminded everyone that authority without restraint and understanding can become dangerous, even for those sworn to protect the public. The investigation continued over the next few days. Interviews were conducted with the officer, his colleagues, and the bystanders who witnessed the event. The young officer expressed deep regret. He admitted that he had overreacted, misjudged the situation, and failed to follow protocol. He explained that he had been nervous and inexperienced, and when confronted with uncertainty, he defaulted to strict enforcement. The director listened to the officer's account, appreciating the honesty, while also recognizing the need for consequences. Back in the director's office, he reflected on human behavior and the nature of fear. He thought about how authority can sometimes blind people to reality, how fear can drive even trained officers to make mistakes. The incident was a lesson not only for law enforcement, but for everyone who holds power. Understanding, patience, and verification were not just ideals. They were essential for safety and trust. The community continued to talk about the event. Witnesses shared their perspectives, describing the tension in the street, the flashing lights, and the moment when the officer realized the director's identity. People noted the calm composure of the director and the nervous, uncertain behavior of the young officer. Many expressed relief that the situation ended without violence. Local news stations interviewed neighbors, and social media users debated the implications. It became a conversation about responsibility, judgment, and the human element in high-pressure situations. As the internal investigation unfolded, the officer was temporarily suspended from duty. He spent the days reflecting on his actions, the decisions he made, and the impact they had on others. He received counseling and guidance, learning about the importance of composure, communication, and verification in law enforcement. He understood that one mistake could alter a career, damage public trust, and put lives at risk. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on him. The director, meanwhile, focused on broader lessons. He initiated training sessions for officers across the department, emphasizing calm decision-making, proper identification, and the importance of verification in high-stress situations. He shared his own experience, highlighting how fear and uncertainty can escalate rapidly and the need to remain composed under pressure. His goal was to prevent similar incidents in the future, ensuring that officers could act responsibly while protecting the public and themselves. Throughout all this, the director maintained a sense of balance and perspective. He met with his family, explaining what had happened without causing unnecessary fear. He discussed the human side of law enforcement, the mistakes, the stress, and the importance of accountability. His family listened, offering support, understanding the pressure that came with his position. It was a reminder that even leaders are human, vulnerable to mistakes and unforeseen situations. Public perception began to stabilize as more details emerged. The officer's actions were seen in context, and the director's composed handling of the situation earned widespread praise. Articles and news segments focused on his calm demeanor, his ability to remain professional under pressure, and his thoughtful response to the incident. At the same time, discussions about the officer's misconduct led to debates about training, supervision, and accountability within law enforcement agencies. As the days passed, the director reflected on the event in personal notes and reports. He documented every detail, every reaction, every step taken by the officer and by himself. He considered the long-term lessons for both the department and the public. The incident was unusual, dramatic, and potentially dangerous, but it also offered an opportunity to improve, to strengthen procedures, and to reinforce the values of restraint, respect, and verification. In quiet moments, the director replayed the incident in his mind. He thought about the officer's fear, the tension in the air, and the reactions of the bystanders. He realized that the event had become more than a personal experience. It was a lesson for the community, a reminder that human error can happen anywhere, and that understanding and accountability are essential. It was a story that would be remembered, shared, and analyzed for years to come. The officer eventually faced formal charges for his actions. The legal process was thorough and fair, reflecting the seriousness of the mistake. During hearings, evidence was presented, including videos, witness accounts, and official reports. The director attended when necessary, providing testimony about the events and their impact. The proceedings highlighted the importance of accountability and the consequences of misjudgment. The officer's career, reputation, and personal life were deeply affected, underscoring the gravity of his error. For the director, the incident reinforced core principles of leadership. He emphasized communication, empathy, and patience in all his teams. He spoke about the human side of law enforcement, the need for composure under pressure, and the responsibility that comes with authority. He encouraged officers to learn from mistakes, to approach every situation with care, and to prioritize verification and understanding over assumptions. By the end of the week, the city began to return to its normal rhythm. Streets were quieter, conversations shifted, and life went on. Yet the memory of the incident lingered in the minds of those involved. For the director, it was a reminder of vulnerability, responsibility, and the human capacity for error. For the officer, it was a lesson in humility, accountability, and the weight of the badge he wore. The story spread beyond the city, shared in news outlets and online forums. People discussed the unusual event, analyzed the reactions, and debated the lessons learned. Many praised the director for his calm and measured response, seeing it as an example of leadership and professionalism. Others focused on the need for better training and oversight in law enforcement, emphasizing that mistakes like this could have devastating consequences if not addressed. Through it all, the director continued his work with renewed focus. He implemented changes in procedures, shared his experience with colleagues, and remained committed to improving the system. The incident had been intense, shocking, and deeply human, but it had also created an opportunity for reflection, learning, and growth. He understood that leadership was not only about making decisions in the office or directing large teams, it was about navigating human complexity, understanding mistakes, and guiding others toward better outcomes. By the time part 2 of the story concluded, the director had not only survived a dangerous misunderstanding but had turned it into a lesson for himself, his team, and the wider community. He had shown that even in moments of fear, calm, rational thinking, and professionalism could prevail. And he had begun to ensure that future officers would have the training, guidance, and awareness needed to prevent similar mistakes, protecting both the public and themselves. The weeks after the incident were a whirlwind of reflection and action for the FBI director. The memory of being held at gunpoint lingered in his mind, each detail replayed like a cautionary film. He thought about the officer's fear, the reactions of bystanders, and the sheer unpredictability of human behavior. Each day brought reminders that even the most careful planning could not account for every variable. He began keeping a journal, writing down observations, emotions, and lessons. This was not just a personal exercise, it was a way to create a record that could help guide others and prevent similar mistakes in the future. At the same time, the internal investigation continued. The officer involved was still suspended, and the scrutiny was intense. Investigators interviewed colleagues, reviewed training records, and studied the sequence of events in painstaking detail. The director cooperated fully, providing testimony and insight without seeking to assign blame personally. He understood that mistakes are often systemic, rather than solely individual, and he wanted the investigation to be fair, thorough, and constructive. The city, meanwhile, remained intrigued by the unusual story. News reports highlighted the event, showing videos of the tense street and the director's calm stance. Social media discussions continued, with citizens analyzing every movement, every word, every decision made during those critical moments. Some praised the officer for acting cautiously, while many others criticized the overreaction. The director's restraint and professionalism became a focal point, inspiring conversations about how authority figures should handle unexpected situations. Back at the office, the director met with senior law enforcement leaders to discuss broader implications. The focus was on preventing future incidents rather than punishing errors. He emphasized that fear and stress can influence decisions in unpredictable ways, and that officers needed better training to manage such situations. Role-playing exercises, verification drills, and communication strategies were developed. The director encouraged openness and honesty, urging everyone to share mistakes and learn from them. He believed that understanding human behavior was just as important as mastering procedures. The young officer spent his days in reflection, attending counseling and training sessions designed to address gaps in judgment and protocol. He admitted to feeling nervous and overwhelmed in the moment, admitting that he had defaulted to rigid enforcement when confronted with uncertainty. His instructors emphasized the importance of composure, observation, and verification. Mistakes, they explained, can have serious consequences, but learning from them is what defines a responsible officer. The officer began to understand how one moment of misjudgment could ripple outward, affecting careers, public trust, and even the safety of others. As the investigation progressed, the director continued to review footage and reports, noting subtle details that others might have overlooked. He analyzed the officer's approach, the positioning of bystanders, and the responses of other officers on the scene. Each element told a story of human behavior under pressure. He wrote notes on how fear can amplify reactions, how assumptions can cloud judgment, and how verification and communication are crucial. The experience became a study in psychology, as much as it was a case of law enforcement procedure. Community engagement became another focus. The director understood that public perception mattered. He held meetings with community leaders, explaining the incident, the lessons learned, and the steps being taken to improve training and accountability. Residents listened intently, asking questions about procedures, verification methods, and how officers are trained to handle unexpected situations. The director answered openly, sharing both the seriousness of the event and the positive outcomes that could emerge. By addressing the community directly, he fostered understanding, trust, and dialogue. At home, he spent quiet evenings reviewing reports and drafting recommendations. The personal reflection was as important as the professional review. He thought about vulnerability, responsibility, and leadership. Even at the highest level of authority, one could be vulnerable. He considered how the incident might change the officer, the department, and the public's expectations. Leadership, he realized, is not only about directing others but also about modeling behavior, demonstrating calm in crisis, and using mistakes as lessons. The officer's legal proceedings began, attracting attention from the media and the public. Evidence was presented, including video recordings, witness statements, and official reports. The director's testimony focused on the facts, emphasizing restraint, safety, and the importance of proper verification. The court examined the officer's actions against established protocols. The process was fair, measured, and aimed at ensuring accountability while understanding human error. The officer's acknowledgement of his mistake and participation in training became a key factor in the proceedings. Within the department, discussions about training became more prominent. Officers were encouraged to reflect on their experiences, identify moments where fear or uncertainty influenced their behavior, and share lessons learned. Simulations and drills were organized, emphasizing realistic scenarios and decision-making under pressure. The director personally attended some of these sessions, observing, giving feedback, and sharing insights from his own experience. His presence reinforced the importance of learning from mistakes rather than merely punishing them. The city gradually moved past the immediate shock of the event, but the lessons remained. Community discussions focused on accountability, trust, and the human element in law enforcement. Citizens reflected on how one small misunderstanding could escalate into a potentially dangerous situation. They also noted the importance of professional conduct and restraint, praising the director for maintaining calm and composure. These conversations contributed to a deeper understanding of law enforcement and public safety, reinforcing the need for transparency and communication. The director also considered the long-term implications for his own role. He realized that experiences like this would shape how he led, communicated, and made decisions. The event had reinforced the importance of empathy, patience, and attention to human behavior. It was a reminder that leadership is not only about authority, but also about understanding, teaching, and guiding others toward better practices. He documented strategies to integrate these lessons into department-wide policies, training programs, and community engagement initiatives. The young officer faced a period of introspection, guided by mentors and counselors. He learned to identify triggers that caused him to react prematurely and practiced techniques to maintain composure under stress. He reflected on the responsibility carried by every badge, understanding that trust is built through consistent, careful, and professional actions. The incident had been a turning point, a difficult but valuable lesson in human behavior, accountability, and the consequences of choices made in high-pressure moments. Throughout the department, the incident became a case study. Officers reviewed the event, analyzed decisions, and discussed how similar situations could be handled differently. Training emphasized calm observation, verification of identity, and communication with colleagues and the public. By using the incident as a learning tool, The department sought to prevent repetition, ensuring that fear and uncertainty would not compromise safety or trust in the future. For the director, personal reflection continued alongside professional responsibility. He considered the broader message. Even the most powerful individuals can face vulnerability. Mistakes can happen to anyone, and understanding human behavior is key to preventing errors. He shared these insights in leadership meetings, mentoring sessions, and community events. His approach highlighted that professionalism, calm, and verification are essential in law enforcement, and that lessons from mistakes can strengthen both individuals and institutions. As part 3 of the story concluded, the director had turned a personal, frightening experience into a catalyst for learning and improvement. The officer involved, though facing consequences, began a journey of growth and understanding. The department, the community, and the director himself gained insights that would influence policies, training, and public interactions for years to come. The incident had been dramatic, tense, and deeply human, but it also became a story of reflection, responsibility, and the power of calm leadership in the face of unexpected danger. The weeks following the investigation brought a new sense of focus and intensity to the FBI director's work. The incident had left an indelible mark, reminding him that even those at the highest levels could be unexpectedly vulnerable. Each morning, he arrived early, reviewing reports, video footage, and witness statements. He carefully examined the timeline of the encounter, analyzing each moment from multiple angles. He wanted to understand not just what happened, but why it happened, and what could be done to prevent similar mistakes in the future. The young officer involved was facing the consequences of his actions. The suspension continued while legal proceedings were underway. He spent his days reflecting on the decisions he had made and the fear that had influenced them. Counseling sessions focused on stress management, composure, and understanding the ripple effect of choices made in high-pressure situations. He recognized that authority carries great responsibility, and that mistakes can affect careers, public trust, and even the safety of others. The gravity of his error weighed heavily on him, and he was determined to learn from it. Meanwhile, the director coordinated with department leadership to develop new training programs. These programs emphasized real-world scenarios, decision-making, under pressure, and the importance of verification before action. Role-playing exercises allowed officers to experience situations where fear or uncertainty could influence judgment, teaching them to remain calm and professional. The director shared his own experience in these sessions, highlighting the tension, the public exposure, and the need for restraint. He wanted officers to understand that mistakes are human, but preparation, awareness, and accountability are essential to prevent them. The city's interest in the story remained strong. News outlets continued to report on the investigation, providing updates on the officer's suspension, the director's reflections, and the broader implications for law enforcement. Social media users debated the incident, sharing their opinions on both the officer's actions and the director's response. Citizens discussed the importance of verification, the role of fear in decision-making, and how authority should be exercised responsibly. Community meetings and public forums provided opportunities for dialogue, helping to bridge understanding between law enforcement and the public. The director spent time meeting with community leaders, explaining the lessons learned and the steps being taken to improve training and accountability. He emphasized that incidents like these are rare, but when they occur, they must be addressed openly and constructively. Residents asked questions about police procedures, verification methods, and how officers are trained to handle uncertainty. The director responded with clarity and honesty, fostering trust and encouraging continued dialogue. He understood that transparency was key to maintaining public confidence. In parallel, the officer began participating in additional training. Programs focused on critical thinking, observation, and de-escalation techniques. He practiced maintaining composure in high-stress situations, learning how to verify identities, communicate clearly, and make measured decisions. Mentors guided him through the process, emphasizing that mistakes, while serious, can be transformed into opportunities for growth. The officer began to see the incident not only as a personal challenge but as a lesson for the entire department. The legal proceedings progressed steadily. Evidence, including videos, reports, and witness accounts, was carefully reviewed. The director provided testimony, recounting the events in detail and emphasizing his own calm approach. The court examined the officer's actions in light of established protocols and professional standards. The process was thorough, fair, and aimed at holding the officer accountable while also considering the human factors that contributed to the situation. The officer's willingness to participate in training and acknowledge his mistakes was noted as a mitigating factor. Back in the office, the director continued to develop policies aimed at strengthening law enforcement practices. He emphasized that fear and stress can influence decisions, and that training, communication, and verification are essential to prevent errors. He implemented new guidelines for interacting with unknown individuals, verifying credentials, and maintaining professional composure under pressure. These guidelines were shared across the department, forming the basis for a broader culture of accountability and continuous improvement. The director also spent time reflecting on the human side of leadership. He considered the emotional impact of the incident on the officer, on himself, and on the community. He understood that authority comes with responsibility, but also with vulnerability. Mistakes can happen to anyone, regardless of experience or rank, and the response to those mistakes is what defines leadership. He wrote detailed notes on lessons learned, planning to share them with colleagues, trainees, and law enforcement professionals across the country. Community engagement remained a priority. The director participated in public discussions, explaining how law enforcement handles unexpected situations and the steps taken to prevent future incidents. He emphasized that transparency, accountability, and open communication are essential for building trust. Residents expressed appreciation for the director's openness, and many noted that the incident, while unusual, had highlighted important lessons about responsibility, judgment, and the human element in law enforcement. As the officer continued his training and reflection, he began to demonstrate significant improvement. He approached each scenario with greater awareness, carefully verifying information before acting. He learned to manage stress and fear, understanding how these emotions can influence decisions. Mentors and supervisors noted his progress, recognizing that the incident had become a turning point in his career. It was a difficult lesson, but one that ultimately strengthened his abilities and understanding. The director, meanwhile, incorporated the lessons of the incident into his broader leadership strategy. He emphasized calm, rational thinking, effective communication, and accountability in all aspects of department operations. He encouraged officers to learn from mistakes, share experiences, and continuously improve. By turning a personal and public challenge into an opportunity for growth, he reinforced the values of professionalism, human understanding, and the responsible exercise of authority. The city gradually returned to its normal rhythm, but the incident remained a point of reference in discussions about law enforcement. Community members reflected on the importance of verification, restraint, and accountability. News reports and online discussions highlighted the lessons learned, emphasizing that mistakes can happen to anyone, but how they are addressed matters most. The director's calm and composed handling of the situation was widely praised, serving as a model for leadership and professionalism. The officer faced the remaining stages of the legal process, understanding the seriousness of his actions and the impact they had on others. He continued training, applied the lessons learned, and demonstrated a commitment to improvement. His experience became a cautionary tale within the department, reinforcing the importance of verification, communication, and composure. The incident had been dramatic and challenging, but it provided an opportunity for growth, reflection, and positive change. For the director, the incident remained a powerful reminder of vulnerability, responsibility, and human behavior. He continued to mentor officers, share lessons, and promote a culture of accountability and learning. The story of the incident became more than a personal experience. It became a teaching tool, a reflection of human error, and a lesson in the power of calm, professional leadership. By turning a tense and potentially dangerous situation into an opportunity for improvement, the director demonstrated the value of resilience, reflection, and human understanding. As Part 4 concluded, the director and his team had not only addressed the immediate consequences of the incident, but had also laid the foundation for long-term improvements. Training programs were enhanced, policies were strengthened, and officers were encouraged to approach their duties with greater awareness, composure, and accountability. The incident, though tense and unexpected, had become a catalyst for growth, ensuring that future mistakes could be minimized and public trust maintained. Through reflection, action, and leadership, the FBI director transformed a frightening experience into a story of learning, improvement, and the enduring importance of human judgment in law enforcement. The months after the incident marked a turning point for everyone involved. The FBI director continued to focus on his work, but the memory of being held at gunpoint remained vivid. Each time he thought about that tense street, the officer's gun, and the crowd of onlookers, he reflected on the fragility of human judgment and the unpredictability of fear. The experience had changed him, not in terms of his authority, but in his understanding of human behavior, vulnerability, and the importance of preparation. The officer who had held the director at gunpoint faced legal consequences. He was formally charged, and the judicial process unfolded with careful attention to detail. During hearings, evidence was presented, including video footage, official reports, and witness statements. The officer admitted to his mistake, explaining the stress and fear that had influenced his actions. While the court recognized his remorse, it also emphasized accountability, underscoring that mistakes in law enforcement carry significant consequences. The officer received a sentence that included jail time, reflecting the seriousness of the error while also providing an opportunity for rehabilitation. The FBI director attended court proceedings when necessary, offering testimony about the events, the actions of the officer, and his own reactions. He spoke calmly, clearly, and professionally, emphasizing the importance of verification, restraint, and careful decision-making in high-pressure situations. His presence reminded the court and the public that even the highest authority figures are human, vulnerable to misjudgment, and reliant on others' decisions. The process reinforced the importance of accountability and demonstrated the consequences of errors in judgment. Back in the department, the director implemented lessons learned from the incident. Training programs were revised and enhanced to include realistic scenarios, emphasizing decision-making under pressure, verification of identity, and communication with colleagues and the public. Officers participated in drills that simulated tense situations, learning how fear and uncertainty can influence actions and how to maintain professionalism. The director shared his own experience as a case study, providing insight into how calm, thoughtful behavior can prevent escalation. Community engagement remained a key focus. The director continued to meet with local leaders, residents, and groups to discuss the incident, the lessons learned, and the steps taken to prevent similar occurrences. Citizens asked questions about law enforcement procedures, accountability, and verification methods. The director responded with transparency and empathy, acknowledging the concerns of the community while highlighting the efforts to improve training and oversight. These discussions strengthened trust and fostered a culture of open communication between law enforcement and the public. The young officer, despite the legal consequences, embarked on a journey of reflection and learning. He engaged in intensive training, focusing on stress management, observation, communication, and decision-making. Mentors and counselors guided him, emphasizing the importance of accountability and the long-term impact of professional mistakes. He began to understand how one moment of fear could affect an entire chain of events, and how careful, measured actions are essential for the safety of the public and officers alike. The experience, though challenging, became a catalyst for growth and self-awareness. Throughout the department, the incident was used as a teaching tool. Officers reviewed footage, analyzed decisions, and discussed alternative approaches. Simulations were organized to replicate high-stress encounters, helping officers practice composure, verification, and communication. The director emphasized that mistakes are human but preventable with preparation, awareness, and training. The story became a symbol of learning, reinforcing the values of responsibility, professionalism, and calm under pressure. For the director, the event reinforced his understanding of leadership. He recognized that authority comes with vulnerability, that human error is inevitable, and that the response to mistakes defines the integrity of an institution. He continued to mentor officers, share lessons from the incident, and promote a culture of accountability, reflection, and continuous improvement. The experience had deepened his empathy and understanding, shaping the way he led and interacted with both colleagues and the public. Public reaction evolved over time. Media coverage highlighted the director's composure, the lessons learned, and the reforms implemented within the department. Social media discussions focused on accountability, verification, and the human element in law enforcement. Citizens praised the director's professionalism and leadership, while reflecting on the importance of training and preparedness for officers. The incident became a case study not only in the city but also nationally, sparking conversations about safety, authority, and human behavior. As the legal process concluded, the officer accepted the consequences of his actions and committed to personal growth and professional improvement. He recognized the gravity of his mistake and the impact it had on the director, the department, and the community. Through training, counseling, and reflection, he began to rebuild his understanding of responsibility, judgment, and the importance of composure under pressure. The incident became a turning point in his career, a lesson that would guide him for the rest of his life. The director continued his work with renewed focus and perspective. He reviewed policies, training programs, and departmental procedures to ensure that mistakes like the one that had occurred would be less likely in the future. He emphasized verification, communication, and calm decision-making in all aspects of law enforcement. By turning a tense and public experience into a framework for improvement, he strengthened both the department and the trust of the community. In personal moments, the director reflected on the fragility of human judgment and the unpredictability of fear. He thought about how easily misunderstanding and miscommunication could escalate, and how one person's reaction could create a cascade of consequences. He considered the young officer's perspective, the stress and uncertainty that had driven his actions, and the lessons learned through accountability and reflection. The incident had been dramatic, tense, and human, but it had also provided clarity, insight, and opportunities for improvement. Community engagement continued to be a priority. The director held meetings, discussions, and training sessions with residents, emphasizing transparency, accountability, and safety. Citizens expressed appreciation for the open dialogue and the efforts made to prevent future mistakes. The incident, though frightening, had become a catalyst for stronger communication and understanding between law enforcement and the public. The director's calm and professional response served as a model, demonstrating how leadership and reflection can turn challenging experiences into lessons for the broader community. The department as a whole benefited from the experience. Officers became more aware of how fear, stress, and uncertainty can influence decisions. Training programs were refined to focus on composure, verification, communication, and critical thinking. Mentors and leaders used the incident as an example of how to respond to high-pressure situations responsibly. The lessons learned were integrated into everyday practice, shaping a culture of accountability, professionalism, and continuous improvement. For the director, the incident remained a reminder of the delicate balance between authority and vulnerability. Leadership required understanding human behavior, anticipating potential mistakes, and guiding others toward better outcomes. Mistakes, he realized, could be powerful teachers if approached with reflection, accountability, and a commitment to improvement. The experience had reinforced the values of patience, empathy, and careful decision-making. As Part 5 concludes, the FBI director had transformed a frightening and unexpected incident into a comprehensive lesson in leadership, accountability, and human understanding. The officer, having faced consequences and embraced growth, represented the potential for learning and improvement. The department and the community emerged stronger, with enhanced training, communication, and trust. The story, though tense and dramatic, became a testament to the power of reflection, professional composure, and the enduring importance of human judgment in law enforcement. Through resilience, accountability, and leadership, a dangerous moment had been turned into a story of growth, learning, and lasting impact.